James O'Keefe, founder of Project Veritas, now excommunicated. Some people thought fired, but apparently Project Veritas, the company that we thought fired him, didn't actually do that. They instead wanted to keep him in this limbo status so that he couldn't do anything, so that when James O'Keefe started a new organization called the O'Keefe Media Group, that they would just turn around and sue him and say, oh, you can't do that. We have non-competes and we have non-disparagement clauses, which means James O'Keefe is sidelined, just like they try to do with other conservative commentators throughout this ecosphere, people like Tucker Carlson, all coming under attack through lawfare to take them out of the game when they're most effective. So Project Veritas, this organization which was supposed to be about truth and exposing the left, is now trying to take out somebody who was instrumental in their creation and their long-term success. Disgusting behavior, but that's what happens when you have other people taking over your organization and then using it as political warfare to take out people who are effective. I think we're going to see a lot more of it, unfortunately. First, let's take a look at this lawsuit and see if we can piece together exactly what is happening here. The document was filed May 31st. It's 37 pages. This is Project Veritas, which until very recently was synonymous with James O'Keefe. Project Veritas basically threw James O'Keefe out for some reason, and now they are suing him in the Southern District of New York, a very unfriendly jurisdiction, by the way, not going to be favorable to James O'Keefe. They are suing him and his new company called the O'Keefe Media Group, also known as OMG. And they're suing these two other people that we're going to hear about, Maxwell and Iatropoulos. And if you're not familiar with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, they have been very impactful in their reporting. They've sent many people undercover to have dates and dinners and interactions with other people in high-profile positions and expose them and the corruption behind them, and has been very effective. And so many people were a bit shocked when there was a separation between the two teams. Now he's being sued. The lawsuit says, James O'Keefe, being known as the founder of an organization, does not entitle that person to run amok and to put his own interests ahead of the organization. O'Keefe has failed in his duties to Project Veritas, causing it serious and significant damage, saying he must be held accountable. And he's been working with two other people called Maxwell and Iatropoulos, and they created their own new company called OMG, and they must be sued. The parties involved are Project Veritas, the Project Veritas Action Fund, James O'Keefe, and the other defendants. The complaint is being filed in the Southern District of New York. They say that's appropriate. And they say these are the facts that give rise to the complaint. They say Project Veritas and our organizations are nonprofits. We're formed under the law. Our vision is aimed at exposing corruption, dishonesty, self-dealing, waste, and fraud, and other misconduct. As not-for-profit organization, they say that Project Veritas relies on donations from private donors. They maintain a database of their donors, including identity. They restrict access to the information. They keep it password protected, and they require other people who have access to the donors to not disclose it. So you see where this is going. They're going to say James took the donor list. James O'Keefe founded this organization that literally threw him out, which makes my skin crawl, in 2010. He was, through his separation, the CEO of the organization, but he was suspended, they say, but not yet removed, right? Wasn't exactly fired. They say on June 22nd, 2010, O'Keefe entered into an employment agreement with the company, with the operative version amended in 2022. Okay, so they got him to sign a new document. They were probably planning this for a while. He signed a new employment agreement. He thinks everything's fine. Hey, James, this is just something we got to do for HR. Everybody's signing it. You okay? Yes, signs it. Signed it on September 30th. As part of that agreement, O'Keefe agreed to certain terms both during and after his employment. In paragraph 1 of the agreement, it says employees shall devote employees' full working time to the employment. Another agreement says that Project Veritas owns everything, like everything. Designs, intellectual property, trade secrets, video, audio, everything is ours. O'Keefe acknowledged that certain information is confidential. He agreed to keep it in the highest confidence and not disclose it. He maintained these obligations. They say employee expressly agrees to the terms of the paragraph. There was also a non-disparagement clause that O'Keefe signed, saying you can't talk crap about Project Veritas. There's a liquidated damages provision, which means you don't even argue about it. You just automatically win and you get the damage. Liquidated damages mean you just assign what the value is. If there's a breach, you've already articulated what the breach is. Okay, oftentimes in a contract dispute, you'll have a disagreement about what constitutes a breach and what the damages are for the breach. You were supposed to do this thing, you didn't, and I'm out. You were supposed to deliver my refrigerator by Thursday. I had another shipment of food coming in on Thursday. The food needs to be in the refrigerator. You gave me the refrigerator on Saturday, so all my food expired, which means I lost $10,000 of food, which means you owe me the $10,000. I've got to prove that damage. How much food was it? 10,000? Okay. There are other situations where you can just say, look, if my thing is not delivered on Thursday, it's $10,000 every time it's not delivered. Okay? You say, I agree, totally. I understand that. That's what I understand the contract to be. In the Project Veritas contract, they say that it is, if for non-disparagement, it's $100,000 per breach. That's in the contract. The employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from engaging in outside activities that would hinder his work with Project Veritas. So they're still saying that he's basically there. He hasn't been fired. He has just been suspended, not removed, okay? Was not removed. He still works for them, according to them, which means that he is still bound by all of these agreements. It also prohibits O'Keefe from soliciting two categories of people. O'Keefe can't go and get employees or donors. O'Keefe agreed that for 1 year after his employment, he's not going to take any employees, probably did. Employment agreement also prohibits O'Keefe from communicating with any donors from Project Veritas. So he also can't get access to those lists. Also, the employment requires that upon separation of employment, but I think they just said, though, that he was not removed, but they say separation. Okay, they're using that word as a term of art. They're saying upon separation of employment. You're still employed, but we're separated, I guess. They say that O'Keefe shall return any property and all of the devices and so on. They say they have a company handbook. The handbook prohibits being intimidating or disrespectful to coworkers. So with all that background, they say that during O'Keefe's employment, the board became aware of serious allegations by Project Veritas employees about a troubling workplace. For instance, board of directors heard O'Keefe routinely behaved unprofessionally during team meetings, screamed at coworkers. O'Keefe was alleged to have particularly targeted female employees with mean-spirited comments, I'm sure, about their lack of contributions to the company and about personal situations like pregnancies. Employees allege that O'Keefe had strained relationships with several donors. He was routinely late for meetings, rude at VIP events, and other things. They say O'Keefe was routinely late for work, canceled them at the last minute, and so on. Now, other employees allege that they had personally observed obscene messages between O'Keefe and various women on social media when accessing his phone for work-related matters. They also learned of alleged financial misconduct. And we've read about all of this stuff. Multiple employees allege that O'Keefe used Project Veritas to run personal errands for them, get my laundry, clean my boat, repair my boat, do other similar things for O'Keefe. O'Keefe also allegedly used his credit card from some personal expenses, lavish expenses, and other things. Apparently $10,000 for a helicopter flight. And O'Keefe has explained most of this stuff, by the way. He has responded to this. We read through a lot of these allegations originally. What happened was, I think, Project Veritas, which was now without O'Keefe, they released a video, they released a statement, and O'Keefe responded to some of this. They directed the organization to pay for his first-class air travel, even when they didn't approve first-class flights per the organization policy. He used his Project Veritas card for expensive hotel rooms, luxury suites. He's the CEO, man. Directing the organization to pay for expenses and other things, and he caused the organization to pay for private cars. A lot of money, $150,000 over the 18 months. Now, just to be clear about this, okay? James O'Keefe is a CEO of a major organization. They had 50 plus employees, I believe. And part of his job was to travel around and talk to people about these things. So he's on airplanes all the time. I've seen him on multiple shows. So part of that is expensive. That's part of the job. You got to pay for those things. O'Keefe took it upon himself without authority to terminate the employment of the CFO, and he admitted that he did the terminating. So they say now, as the CEO, he did something he didn't have action to do. The board took immediate action. The board created a special audit committee to investigate the allegations, hired outside counsel. By February 6, by majority vote, the board placed O'Keefe on paid leave. Didn't fire him, but they suspended his authority to hire and fire staff for 180 days. They required him to surrender his company credit card, and they restrict his access to proprietary information, including donor lists, but they explicitly said that he remains as CEO and member of the board. Isn't that weird? So you can be the CEO, but don't have your credit card, don't have any authority to hire and fire. He's on paid leave. So he is still getting paid according to them, but he's got to give up everything else. So paid leave. So I wonder if those checks are still coming into O'Keefe. After authorization to use the card was revoked, he continued to use the credit card for personal expenses and racked up $19,000. He participated in the February 6th meeting. Employee testimony was heard. He refused to participate February 10th, and O'Keefe was suspended as the CEO. but not removed from the board, indefinitely pending the resolution of the board's investigation. So then, on February 15th, Project Veritas and the executive director put out a statement. They said explicitly, James O'Keefe has not been removed from Project Veritas. No, if you remove him, then he's free. The statement notes that the board members all love James O'Keefe. They were volunteers handpicked by O'Keefe. And in that statement, it was explicitly denied that the actions regarding O'Keefe and the Pfizer company, we will never be brought to you by Pfizer, they said. O'Keefe sent an email outlining terms for his return, including the resignation of all board members and officers, and vesting unilateral control back to him. Otherwise, he said, I'm not returning to employment. So the board did not terminate O'Keefe's employment, but rather they intended to reinstate him with appropriate safeguards, if you believe that, for a minute. O'Keefe was not formally removed from the board until April 24th. O'Keefe was not formally terminated from his employment until May 15th. Okay, so apparently now he has been fired. But prior to that firing, they say in response to his suspension, O'Keefe immediately began breaching his obligations under our agreements. So now he's been fired, and they're going to say that, a bunch of provisions should still apply to him, like the non-disparagement clause and all the things. On February 17th, O'Keefe formed OMG, based in New York where he lives and where Project Veritas is headquartered. They're putting this in here saying that this is too close to home, in other words. He's going to be operating right in our backyard, and we have a non-compete for that reason. According to its website, OMG is a media organization managed by O'Keefe with about the same mission as Project Veritas. OMG is a company whose website describes itself as having an army of journalists, building an army of investigators with the most elite journalists in the world. The website even refers to never being shut down again because O'Keefe owns it. Forming and operating OMG was in violation of our prohibited outside activities. They say James O'Keefe has a non-compete, so he can't do that. They say O'Keefe made multiple appearances in which he falsely stated that he was terminated from Project Veritas. He showed up on these shows, went on the Charlie Kirk show, falsely implied that his separation was part of the aftermath of the Pfizer story, falsely stated that he was thrown out of Project Veritas. Kind of sounds like he was to me. The appearance on the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG. O'Keefe also went on War Room, also falsely stated that he had been removed from Project Veritas. The appearance of the foregoing program was by O'Keefe for the benefit of OMG. He also hopped on with Russell Brand, said he was thrown out of Project Veritas, also for the benefit of OMG. Went on Mark Levin, went on Human Events, hung out with Ben Shapiro, said Project Veritas had been stolen from me. Then he went on the Megyn Kelly show. Shout out to Megyn Kelly. Falsely stated that he was terminated from employment with Project Veritas. They say that all of these statements are disparaging of Project Veritas. They were intended to discredit the board of directors, and they're all breaches of our agreements. They say James also disparaged the board by falsely insinuating that Pfizer orchestrated the suspension, or that it was somehow done to mollify them, which is curious. Pfizer is very powerful. It is an interesting coincidence. But they say the Pfizer video was released nearly 2 weeks prior to the complaints, prompting the investigation. They say O'Keefe misappropriated confidential information, here it is, by taking donor lists and contact information. Unreleased investigations, he rebranded as OMG. He took the content they're alleging. After his suspension, O'Keefe engaged in a campaign to disparage Project Veritas to make donations come to his new company. And he also brought employees and contractors and attempted to poach them to come work for OMG. O'Keefe recorded and published a video, which has later been removed, posted that on Vimeo, announcing he was packing up his personal belongings and starting anew. Didn't resign, and he was generally soliciting employees to come work with him. He says, our mission continues, I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take a new name. It may no longer be called Veritas. I will need a bunch of people around me. I'll make sure you know how to find me. O'Keefe continues to solicit Project Veritas's donors. He sent an email to another donor, sent a form solicitation email to at least 2 Project Veritas donors who are not OMG donors. He said, hey there, I know you've been a supporter of my work in the last year. And he links back to his own subscriptions page. They say O'Keefe misappropriated the property by taking the equipment, donor, and intellectual property. And they confirm that several Project Veritas staff have also already joined OMG, including R.C. Maxwell and Anthony Iatropoulos. Iatropoulos also violated his agreements. Iatropoulos signed it too. And he violated 11, 2, 13, 15, 16, 17, 21, 22, and 23. And so did Iatropoulos. Same terms, and also liquidated damages at $10,000 per breach. They say that the employment agreement also confirms for us that if O'Keefe breaches this or threatens to breach, Project Veritas can seek injunction to stop him from doing things. O'Keefe already acknowledged that a breach will result in irreparable harm when he signed the document. And the employment agreement provides that if Project Veritas obtains an injunction, that he shall then immediately become liable to pay attorney's fees and costs incurred to obtain the injunction. Okay, so it's a pretty bulletproof agreement that he signed, which gives them a lot of options to come after him. And so it's important that he responds aggressively at this stage, because even the injunction gives them an opportunity to go after the attorney's fees alone. If the court does not preliminarily enjoin O'Keefe and OMG from soliciting donors and employees, they may have solicited them all by the time we win a judgment. So saying, Judge, our ship is sinking now. They're taking all of our donors. Stop them before they continue to do anything. We've got a couple counts. We'll fly through these. Count 1, breach of contract. They say that there was a signed agreement that bound both parties. Project Veritas was the beneficiary of this. O'Keefe agreed to the agreement in writing. He used the donor list and other information for his own company. He says he acknowledges that it was confidential. He rebranded our stuff, took affiliated people. He said that he would not engage in ventures that compete with us, that increase the likelihood of a conflict of interest. And he agreed to all these terms. Now he's soliciting employees and donors and prospective donors, even though he agreed he wouldn't do that. We demanded that he return all of his property on May 17th. He failed to return the donor lists. He maintained a toxic workplace culture when he was working with us. He already agreed to $100,000 in liquidated damages. And they say accordingly, as a direct and proximate result of O'Keefe, we, Project Veritas, have been irreparably harmed and we're entitled to injunctions. 1, they want O'Keefe to stop disparaging Project Veritas and uphold the non-disparagement agreement. They want O'Keefe to have an injunction to stop him from contacting or soliciting donors in violation of the agreement. They want to stop him from soliciting employees or from using any of the confidential information that was in the company outside of the company. And they want to stop him from keeping and failing to return any other property. They also want attorney's fees. They say, unless the judge does something here, we're going to continue to suffer irreparable harm. We're going to lose donors. We're going to suffer reputational harm, and we're going to lose injury to our goodwill. So the balance of all of these equities, they say, Judge, falls entirely in favor of Project Veritas. And if you grant this injunction, O'Keefe is going to suffer no prejudice under the ruling. They say, lastly, an immediate injunction is necessary because without it, any final injunction that plaintiffs win will be rendered ineffectual. If O'Keefe is not enjoined now, he's going to have solicited all or enough donors and employees to wreck everything. They say he also violated the Trade Secrets Act, saying that O'Keefe took and failed to return the donor list, misappropriated our trade secrets, said this was done willfully and maliciously, and that as a result, they've suffered actual losses. They say that O'Keefe breached his fiduciary duties. He had an obligation and a duty to the company. Under New York law, you need confidence and integrity. You get superior influence and control. You're held to a fiduciary standard. Therefore, O'Keefe had a duty to act in good faith. O'Keefe acknowledged that they have that duty, and O'Keefe didn't abide by that duty. O'Keefe also breached his duty of loyalty to the company, saying that he also converted materials, which is basically a civil version of kind of theft. You convert something that isn't yours into yours. He took the donor lists and then utilized them for his own efforts. We have a replevin claim, failing to return the donor lists. So the property needs to go back. They want indemnification. They want tortious interference with a contract. A lot of different claims here. A lot of very duplicative claims. We'll fast forward through a lot of this. Another one here. We'll fast forward through this. This is a similar claim against Iatropoulos. So another breach of contract against, it sounds like one of the employees that O'Keefe brought over with him. So similar claims against him. Another breach of contract against Maxwell, another employee that came over, and another tortious interference claim against him and OMG because they're now working at OMG. And so as we get to the end of this complaint, Project Veritas is asking the court to declare the following. Declare that James O'Keefe is in breach of his employment agreement, in violation of fiduciary duties, and in violation of his duty of loyalty. Declare that Iatropoulos broke the contract. Maxwell broke the contract. OMG interfered with the employment agreement. O'Keefe misappropriated trade secrets. They want O'Keefe liable for all costs of this defense. They want a preliminary injunction. This means the court is demanding action. They want O'Keefe stopped from doing any of the following: soliciting or contacting Project Veritas donors, employees, or contractors, disparaging the plaintiffs, talking badly about those loser idiots at Project Veritas, idiots, obtaining, using, or disclosing plaintiffs' confidential information, or keeping and failing to return plaintiffs' property. They want all of it back. They also want the court to issue a permanent injunction enjoining Iatropoulos and Maxwell from not returning the property. They want to compel O'Keefe to account for his official conduct under the New York business laws. They want to award Project Veritas compensatory and punitive damages. So they really want to make this expensive. They want to disgorge all of the funds which O'Keefe and OMG were unjustly enriched on. So all of those donos and subscriptions and all the money that they're raising, they want the court to take all of that money. They say that that was gained illegally through the misappropriation of Project Veritas trade secrets. They also want to disgorge his salary during his period of disloyalty, okay? So all of the money that they paid him when he was on leave, they want it back. Award plaintiffs exemplary damages, really make it sting, and award plaintiffs reasonable attorney's fees and other things that were conducted at a violation of this agreement. So they want to make it hurt bad. Bad, bad, bad. They basically threw him out of his company. He's taking all of their employees, all of their donors. They're spiraling into an abyss, saying it's going to cause irreparable damage. And now they want to take him out, even though he's not allowed to use or work with them anymore after they put him on leave. He is now being sued for starting another company. And what they allege is violating their trade agreements and breaching a contract. They say plaintiffs demand a trial by jury on all claims, respectfully submitted by Jay Woolman over at their Randazza Legal Group. He hails from Connecticut. So very, very stern demands in there. They want this thing to hurt badly. This is the new employment agreement that apparently they signed recently. This was on 6/22/2010. That was the original agreement date, but this is when it was amended. At-will employment agreement. Start date 6/20/22. Compensation, almost $500,000 on that as the CEO. At-will agreement. Responsibilities, you can see all of it's here. Full working time, complete final unfettered control. Compensation is going to be in there, at-will employment, paid time, additional paid time, health insurance, intellectual property. Project Veritas, sole owner of all rights. We saw this in the filing. To the extent that questions arise about whether Project Veritas owns anything, employee hereby expressly irrevocably sells, transfers all things. This is going to be a lot. This is going to be a battle. Confidential information, and presumably he signed this document. There's another exhibit as well. This looks like it might be the, let's see what this is. Author is at-will employment agreement for press secretary. Okay, so these are for the other people, for R.C. Maxwell. That's his term. So that's the Maxwell agreement. This is the Anthony Iatropoulos agreement. So they're using DocuSigns on this stuff. And let's see if James had a signature. Probably also a DocuSign. Yeah, there it is. James O'Keefe, 9/30/2022. DocuSigned. So we've got the DocuSign code right there. And I'm sure they'll trace it back to his email and all that stuff. And this is going to be a battle. No doubt about it. This is going to be a battle. And so let's take a look at some other reaction on this. We had a nice comment from our friend Amuse, who was talking about employment law and about what New York might say about this. If you can just fire somebody and not pay them and then continue to demand they don't work, it's almost like slavery. It's like you own somebody without paying them. Kind of troubling. So Amuse, great follow on Twitter at Amuse, says Project Veritas is suing its founder. They claim they never fired him, that he's in violation of his employment agreement by starting a new company. We read the full lawsuit, and there's another take on this. He said down here, when Project Veritas stopped paying O'Keefe, they violated both his employment agreement and federal and state labor laws. They created hostile work environment then, and then constituted constructive termination. So what they did in how they released him was horrific. And they said, no, we were going to bring him back with guardrails and all of this stuff. So it's basically constructive termination. You didn't technically fire him, but you fired him, okay? Everybody knows you fired him, and he was working somewhere else. So you can't keep him as this pseudo employee that you're not paying or giving any power to sideline him off the game. When he starts to get back into it, now you want to say that you never let him go? Feels like it is constructive termination. And I think everybody knew it. And Amuse tells us it's a violation of both federal and New York state law to not pay him. Project Veritas claims in its lawsuit that O'Keefe was never fired. They just stopped paying him and stopped giving him access to everything and allowed him to do all of these things. So the great questions, why are they doing this? Why, oh why? Why was James removed from Project Veritas? To silence him. Why did Project Veritas stop paying James? To silence him. Why does Project Veritas Veritas claim they didn't fire James? To silence him, saying they're using a novel legal theory that James should not be allowed to work as a reporter or start a new company. He was fired on February 10th, received his last paycheck on the 20th, swallowed his pride, resumed work, started a new company. Now they want a federal judge to bar him. Why? To silence him. Who's pulling the strings at Project Veritas? Great question. We don't know the answer to it, but is it a coincidence? I don't think so. Feels like there is a hidden agenda to take out the conservatives, and Tucker Carlson may have come down as a result of the Dominion lawsuit. James O'Keefe was being sidelined by his own company that he founded, and there's going to be more of this to come, I do believe.